America and those listening around the world. It's time for The Conservative Syndicate with your host, John Matthews, self-ordained, politically incorrect, mad prophet of the airwaves. The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most knowledgeable activists and pundits today that together seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement with those seeking the truth regarding the similarities and differences between the religion of politics and the politics of religion.
We have put in place the toughest ethics laws and toughest transparency rules of any administration in history.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever.
Did you mislead Americans about the taxes, about keeping your plan, in order to get the bill passed?
No, I did not. All you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is. For some reason, people keep on being surprised when I do what I said I was going to do. I'm doing it because I said I was going to do it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
And now, your host, John Matthews.
Hey, how are we doing out there all across this great land of ours and around the world? It's that time. It's time for the Conservative Syndicate. Coming to you live right now. Out here from the old left coast, out here in Orange County, LA County. I like to call it the DMZ, the liberal and conservative strongholds that are out here. Anyway, we're glad to have you with us tonight. I guess, let's see, how are we going to do this tonight? We got a couple of things we want to do. But I guess I could start the show out by saying what we want to do right now is we want to get back to business. So we've been kind of goofing off in some ways during this week. We spent a whole day yesterday talking about the Hillary, Jeb Bush, what's the other guy, Donald Trump kind of stuff, the introductions and everything else. And we knocked that out yesterday, and I think Monday we kind of goofed around a little bit, just kind of jumped around on some different things. And but tonight we're going to get back to difference and get back to real business. And so we're going to so we're gonna do what we can do. We're gonna get back to it. I want to talk a little bit about the what are we going to call it? What's her name? Rachel Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal. We're going to talk about her just a little bit tonight, just briefly. Not going to be a real big deal about this, but I did want to just point out one thing about what's going on with this. And I think it's very important that we just kind of pay attention to this, because what we're going to see, I guarantee you what we're going to see, what we're already seeing and what we're going to see is a little bit of we're going to see some of this racism from the left exposed, and we're going to see it, I think, in a major way from the black community itself. So it started today. It actually started yesterday, but it's really coming out right now, because what we're finding out is that there's a bunch of black activists out there that are really upset about the fact that they had a white woman running one of their chapters or one of their branches of the NAACP. They're not saying that in so many words, but when you hear, I've been doing this long enough that you can read between liberal doublespeak. You read between the lines and you know what's really going on. So having said that, I've got with me my partner in crime, of course, Joe Hakos from Dry Report. How are you doing tonight, Joe?
I am just wonderful, John. I'm just an old white guy. That's what I actualize myself to be. I'm not making any other claims beside that. I cannot fly. I cannot go faster than speeding bullets. And I cannot time shift anything. So that's just me. That's just the way I am. That's how all I'm doing right now. So hopefully, that works out for us. I wouldn't think what we were doing the past couple of days was playing around. Talking about this idiot, though, I would definitely kind of consider that playing around. But we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, sometimes you got to lighten up. I mean, this stuff can get so overwhelming, and there's so much of it going on today, and in so many different ways, so many different angles, and it changes. I mean, I was looking at some of the stuff on Obama's trade agreement. One of the things I want to talk about tonight in relation to how Hillary Clinton is now trying to backpedal from it. From what I understand, she was at the drawing board with her and David Axelrod, which means this was actually drawn up back in the beginning of Obama's administration. This isn't something that they just dreamed up overnight. So
heck no, man! They didn't just dream this up. In fact, I'm looking at a CNN Politics article by Jake Tapper, and it's 45 times Clinton pushed for the trade bill she opposes now. So 45 times previously, she was all for it, John.
Yeah, and she's come out. She has since come out now that she's running for office. She has since come out and she's what do you want to say? She's questioned it a little bit. She's expressed some doubt in terms of whether or not this should actually go forward because it doesn't have enough Democrat votes and stuff. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that tonight. We're going to talk about the revelation, well, not revelation to us. We've known this for years now, but the release of information that shows that there was no such thing as a spontaneous response. This administration knew this thing was coming down the pipe. In fact, these emails and these memos actually exposes why Ambassador Stevens and 3 other Americans ended up dead, and why the military was told to stand down, why it turned into the fiasco that it did. And we've known this. I think we figured this out about a month after the embassy burned. But the media is always a day late and a dollar short. And
well, in this case, they're like 3.5 years late.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, and then Bob Cardoza will be with us in the second hour, and we're going to talk about. We're going to continue our lesson in understanding economics and trade. Bob did a really good job last week of explaining to us the evolution of our economy in terms of how money and currency and gold and we started out as a country that bartered, went to what he called a fiat system. We went to currency. And now we're basically, our economy is being driven by trade, and nothing is more has put it more into more peril than Obama's restricting and doing what he's done to kill the jobs in America. But now he wants to ship most of those jobs overseas, something the left has, or better yet, ship the people from overseas here.
Yes.
So they can draw from all the benefits here while we just continue to decline in income, and that income gap will certainly decrease because more people will be poor rather than more people becoming rich. So all these things fit together. I was thinking, Joe, just before the show, there's an old saying, one that I no longer believe, but as a child I believed, that it says that God moves in mysterious ways. And what I'm seeing here is perhaps one of those mysterious ways. We're coming up on an election cycle, and isn't it strange that all of a sudden all this stuff is starting to come to the surface at this point in time? And I can't help but think, or I'm hoping, maybe I'm just hoping, that this is kind of like God's way of bringing it all to a head. Maybe there have been enough people in this country that have wanted to return back to one nation under God and restore our tradition, our heritage, the moral gauge by which we determine laws and everything else. And just the fact that all this is coming out, Hillary she's either going to be the Democrat nominee, or the Democrat Party is going to crash and burn big way, because the only other choice they have at this point is Bernie Sanders, which is kind of the class clown. So it's interesting to see that at all this time, the media is picking things up and actually doing a little bit of reporting now.
I don't
bringing
know
things out and saying. And they're not hiding the fact that Obama and Clinton have been walking hand in hand this whole time on a lot of these issues. Do you see that at all?
I wouldn't know about them actually doing a report, and I bet you Karen would beg to differ on that one. but from Rage Against the Media, Karen Siegman. Yeah, so I'm here to tell you, no, these things are coming out, but they've been screaming. We've had our friend Dara Issa from California, by the way. He drug his feet on this Benghazi hearing for quite a while, and these folks have known a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is not serious. Now, the Sydney emails that we keep talking and hearing about, now those came from Hillary's private server, if we remember that. Now, we've got to understand these emails are all from the private server, and I don't know why Sid decided to throw some emails out there yesterday. Maybe because, he had copies of them and they were just left over. But you were talking about the trade bill and Clinton's support of it, and that is very important when we're talking about China, this trade bill, and they're going to be pushing it. Tomorrow is another vote, people, so get out there and contact whoever it is you contact and light them up, because across the board, people are against this, and they're going to try to continue to shove it down our throats or up our butts, however you want to put it. But they're going to go ahead and go along and go against the people once again, because they know best.
Well, this is a good point. They're actually going to try to vote on this again. Is this in the House?
Yes.
They're going to try to vote?
Yes, they are. Yes.
And they think that they've reversed that 120 some odd votes?
Well, they're going to have a little barbecue tonight over at the South Lawn at the White House tonight, and there might be some arm twisting go on, because, Obama thinks, dear Barack thinks he can get those Democrats, those 140 Democrats that didn't go his way. He thinks he can arm twist them into voting and seeing things his way, but there are still enough Republicans not voting for this that if they just hold their ground, it's not going to work. But, that being said, the leadership of the Republicans they're doing a purge on the whip team. The people out there on that team are whipping up the votes to get them to stand in line, because you're not allowed to have your own constituency. You have to go along with leadership. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going to happen. That's tonight on the South Lawn of the White House, a little barbecue for Congress. And hopefully when you call them up, maybe they'll say, hey, thanks for the great barbecue last night, because we're paying for it.
Yeah. Well, that would mean at this point it's probably getting underway.
Oh, yes, it ought to be. It's about 8:12 there on the White House South Lawn. So, yeah, they're probably all full of pork and beans and some hot dogs and maybe some ribs.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe a couple burgers.
If at least the first couple of rounds have been passed out, maybe first couple of lines in some cases.
Maybe Boehner's out there doing a limbo right now.
Yeah, he's probably back there either pressing his shirt or going through a pack of cigarettes, or maybe slammed down a bottle of wine by now. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, the idea for the limbo is how low can you go, and they are out to be very low.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about that as we just kind of glide through the show tonight. We may do it in bits and pieces. I don't know, but we definitely know what we want to do. I often tell people there is a method to my madness. You just sometimes have to stick with me, because I have a tendency to pull in 2 or 3 threads at a time, and then what I try to do at that point is I'll bunch them all together, and you'll see. I've had people tell me this when I preach at church. They'll say, John, I'm listening to you, and it's like you're going in 3 different directions, and then all of a sudden you bring everything together, and I go, oh, that's what he's talking about. That's sometimes I just do it that way.
They just don't understand, John. They just don't understand the mad prophet, John.
That's right. That's why I'm a mad prophet. I can go in 4 different directions. I can multitask mentally, but I can't. That's about the only way I can do it. I'm not just sometimes do that, because what you have to do is draw from all these different threads. That's the key to understanding liberalism. And that's the key to understanding politics these days, actually, is you have to be able to pull from multiple sources and take and pick and choose. Oh, this fits, this doesn't, and then you can put it together. And you normally if you can do that, or if you can hang around somebody like us, because we do that here, you can begin to see what the story is about. You can begin to see what the real agenda is. You can really see who's telling the truth and who isn't. And these days, it's not really hard to find out who's not telling the truth, because none of them are. So
Yeah. And then you go out and you take a nice hot shower to clean yourself off.
Either that or throw a barbecue. Anyway, we got to go to our first commercials here. When we come back, I want to talk briefly about this Rachel Dolezal and what she has sent some waves through the NAACP. The rest of us have forgotten most of this by now, outside of the jokes. But it's really making a ripple and really upset the NAACP. So we're gonna talk about that briefly when we come back. Just stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. Don't go away. We got a lot for you tonight. You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right, General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. Hey, we're back right here on the Conservative Syndicate, and I am your host, John Matthews, mad prophet of the airways, on a mission from God, and that mission is to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. And we do that on this show by espousing what I refer to as the conservative gospel, and we expose the lameness of the leftist agenda. And I have Joe Hickles from Drive Report, my co-host. And what I want to let's open up here with this little bit here on Rachel Dolezal, who is beginning to make probably through the weekend, and then it'll die out perhaps a little bit more than it has, making the liberal talk show pundits. I believe she was on Melissa Perry Harris, or is it Melissa Harris Perry, whatever combination she's using. It doesn't really matter anymore. I mean, I guess we can just call her George Janofsky if we want to, and just spell it however we want to. We live in a day and age where anything is whatever you want it to be. But Rachel Dolezal is out there making the circuit, and she was on NBC's Savannah Guthrie on NBC Nightly News. She did an interview, and I want to just briefly read what she said about her ethnicity, her race. She says, when someone asks, are you black, which I actually don't get asked very often until recently, since a few days ago, I say, yeah, I'm black. She says, I know who raised me. They were talking to her. They asked her questions about her biological parents. And this is her response. This is just amazing. She says, I know who raised me. I haven't had a DNA test. There's no biological proof that Larry and Ruth Ann are my biological parents. I'm not necessarily saying that I can prove they're not, but I don't know that I can actually prove they are. I mean, the birth certificate was issued a month and a half after I'm born, Certainly, there were no medical witnesses to my birth because I was born in the woods. So now she's a poor black child born in the woods to white parents, but she's not really sure. Not really sure. Maybe she's Steve Martin's long lost sister.
She was raised by bears.
Yeah. Who, by the way, these bears also adopted 4 black children, like her parents did. But she says, I'm definitely not white. Nothing about being white describes who I am. So, what's the word for it? The closest thing I can come to is if you are black or white, I'm black. I'm more black than white. On the level of values, lived experience, and in this moment, that's the answer. That's the accurate answer from my truth. But I hope the dialogue continues to push again. What is race? What is ethnicity? So she's asking the very question that most white people are asking, if you want to be honest about it. What is this big deal about race if it's not about color, as most black activists will tell you? I'm not saying every black person walking around the face of the earth thinks this way. I'm talking about the activists. I'm talking about the talking heads. I'm talking about the big mouths. I'm talking about the shakedown artists. These are the people that are out there trying to convince us that as white people, we just have no clue what it means to deal with racism and be victims of racism. I've talked in the show before about growing up in a Southern Baptist town for a number of years back in Tennessee, and my parents were Catholic. My father was a converted Baptist, converted to Catholicism to marry my mom, and I went to Catholic school, and we attended Catholic Mass. And, we took our share of shots from people. We were called mackerel snappers and mix and things like that, So, but I guess that doesn't really equate to bigotry or racism or hatred or anything else, because after all, we were all white. Except for the two Cato brothers. My best friends were twins, black twins, the Cato brothers. And my grandmother made it very plain when I brought them home one day not to ever bring these ends back to her house. And so that's where I was introduced to racism. But the point being is that Dolezal brings up the very argument that a lot of us in the white community think. It's like, what's the big deal? Why are you guys making such a big deal about color? Because obviously, in her words, here's somebody who, is telling us it doesn't have anything to do with your DNA. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. It has to do with your culture. It has to do with who you identify with. I'm not saying she's right, but I'm saying she kills the whole racist argument. Don't you think, Joe?
Oh, she's killing a lot of things, but...
Well, she is. She obviously is, because what's happened is some of these people in the black activist community are really mad.
Yeah, well, they could be mad, but what really it really surprises me is, wow, she was quote unquote black, and they're all standing behind her because she's a black, quote unquote. But the actual black conservatives never get a rise, never get any help from these folks. It's just kind of like, wow, hey, the Clarence Thomases, the Doreen Borellis, those kind of folks, the Condoleezza Rice's, you're a conservative, so you're obviously too stupid, and so they get nothing. They get nothing but grief. They get grief.
That just further illustrates what we're saying here.
Thank you. That's why I wanted to bring that up. It's kind of like, hey, here's some points here.
Yeah, because if people like Clarence Thomas cannot experience racism by blacks, if he cannot be, it cannot be expressed by blacks that he's Uncle Tom or Condoleezza Rice or any of these people that, today we got Tim Scott, we got Ben Carson, we got Herman Cain. All these people are referred to in the black community as, turncoats, basically. Tom, what do you call them? Uncle Toms, that kind of thing. And so what's the big deal here? I mean, it squishes it. And I think this is why people like Viola Spencer of the NAACP, she's really upset. She goes, I think she set us back. I think this is a setback. It's sad that we have to focus so much on this when there's so much more work to do. Well, if you're dealing with if everything you're doing is based on this idea of racism, and this woman has just proven to you that she was able to dupe you into thinking she was black, then, and if she identifies as black, it becomes irrelevant whether she really is or not. What becomes relevant is the fact that you guys bought her line, hook, line, and sinker. You fell for the whole thing. And so that should at least be an example of the fact that maybe white people can understand what it means to be black. That's my point. That's the point I'm getting at. We've got these people like the Ethics Commission now is investigating her. See, she resigned, but we know that she wasn't. She resigned like you either resign or we fire you. You know that's how that had to go down.
Yeah.
But the Ethics Commission is checking her out because she lied on her application and landed in a position on the Spokane Police Oversight Board as a black representative. I guess because they now know she's white, she can't represent them.
Yeah, so what about all the work she did before that? She was obviously representing and trying to do good things for the black community. A white person can't do good things for the black community then?
Now, because all of a sudden she's white, they were saying a lot of the NAACP members were saying that she was welcome to remain in the organization because they said she did a good job.
Yeah.
But Spokane NAACP President James Wilburn, the former president, says no, it wasn't really that great, and it's a poke in the eye to the other leaders who have been working in the trenches and doing things. Well, my understanding was she's been working in the trenches and doing things.
Yeah, so what's the big deal?
It's because all of a sudden she's white, that she was in a different trench.
So it disqualifies her if all the quote-unquote good work she did is now no good because she pulled a fast one and wasn't really black, but still, was the work good enough to stand on its own?
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, all of a sudden it's changed? All of a sudden anything and everything? I mean, she obviously didn't get appointed to this position just because she had a good tan. She obviously had to do something to get there. She obviously had to prove that she believed in what she was doing, which I don't take away from her. I think she does believe in what she was doing.
So it wasn't the content of her character. It had more to do with the color of her skin.
Right. The color of the skin in their eyes is the problem. So then what we have to ask is, who are the real racists here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not that we have to ask. I'm thinking as folks at the Spokane NAACP need to ask, who's the real racist here?
Who's the real racist here?
Yeah, they should be asking themselves. They should be looking in the mirror and go, is her work good enough? Did she do a good enough job? If she did, then fine. Then what's so wrong? Yeah, she lied to you about her race. But
yeah,
did she do the work or not? Oh, if she did the work, then it just goes to prove that, wow, it is about what you are inside, not what you can see on the outside.
Right. Now, I mean, you can make these outlandish claims that somehow your DNA is other than what it is. I mean, I don't care about that. That's
poor parents.
That's the battle cry of the homosexual community. You know, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, or in my case, I'm a lesbian. You know, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. You know, so,
yes.
But that, you know,
poor guy. You
can claim that DNA thing, and that's outlandish as stupid. Okay, but the central argument, or the main theme of the argument, is very, I think, very accurate. I think she expressed herself very well, and I think she believes everything she said. Now, whether she's delusional or not, put her in front of her shrink and find that out. I don't really care. The point is that she pulled it off, and now that the black community understands that they got duped, that's how they're looking at it. They got duped. All of a sudden, everything she's done is irrelevant, has fallen short, doesn't mean anything. And that's the sign of bigotry. There's your bigotry. There is your racism. That's really all I wanted to say about that. We're going to go to a commercial here. When we come back, we're going to breach once again yet another wall with Hillary Clinton. And we got so many angles to come at this woman. I don't know how this woman sleeps at night. I really don't. It must be maybe it's those brewskis at the barbecue tonight will allow her to sleep. I don't know.
Oh, no, she's not there.
Anyway, we're going to go to the commercials here and stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. We will be right back in just a moment. Don't go away. You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate.
real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification require cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing, and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
Hey, we're back right here on the Conservative Syndicate. Again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And I want to continue the conversation that we were having. Well, no, not the conversation we were having earlier. I want to move to another conversation. I guess I should have put it that way. But it all kind of fits together. I mean, I'm hoping by the end of the show you can see the pattern here. I guess what I'm trying to do tonight is I'm trying to establish and expose the pattern of liberal reasoning, if you want to call it that. Some people might call it insanity. Let's call it the pattern that identifies and clarifies liberal insanity in terms of how they take things and make it seem like something that's not for purposes other than what they're telling us it's for, if I can put it that way. Well, that was a little bit of a twister, but I hope you get the drift of what I'm saying here. I want to talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton, who's now in full campaign mode and out there either walking back her previous stances on things or trying to distract and with her rhetoric, the liberal doublespeak rhetoric, about doing whatever she can to make America safe. And but I want to kick it off this way. I was looking at an article today in the Fiscal Times by Liz Peek, and it was entitled, "Obama's Unilateral Presidency Crashes into the Constitution." And what she's talking about here is actually going through and kind of giving us an overview, a review in some cases, an overview of how Barack Obama has, during his time as president, basically alienated the Democrat Party when they didn't go along with him, circumvented the Constitution by doing things outside of Congress, and aligning himself with the Republicans when it was, politically expedient to do so, and vice versa, the Republicans aligning themselves with Barack Obama when it was politically expedient. And in the article, she mentions the trade agreement, and I'm going to read you a couple paragraphs here. She says the Trans-Pacific Partnership is essential to Obama's foreign policy legacy. So apparently he thinks foreign policy is about international trade and not about national defense. Elsewhere, his adventures overseas have been disastrous. The president has created a power vacuum in which Russia and China are increasingly belligerent, and ISIS spreads its influence unchecked. So the famous pivot to Asia is all that's left, and that hangs by the thread of the TPP. Meanwhile, the courts may squash other portions of his vaunted legacy. The Supreme Court will rule shortly on the fate of Obamacare. This time, the Roberts Court may pull the plug on the program. In response, President Obama is indignant, and he is once again being dishonest about Obamacare. See the lie of the year. If you like your health plan, you can keep it. Now, that said, we have to now begin to assess and tie Hillary to Obama, something that she's trying to step back and something that the media at this point is pretty much avoiding. They're not really going out of their way. It's kind of like if they happen to cross paths, then they'll say something about it, but they're not really going on there with it. You don't see the investigative reporting that if something like, Ronald Reagan, during the Iran-Contra scandal, anybody that was tied to that, the media in this day and age, I'm not saying they did it back then, but in this day and age, they'd be crying for impeachment. There'd be everybody, the janitor would be up under investigation right now, that, the guy cleans out Reagan's bathroom. What did he know and when did he know it? That kind of thing. But that's not really happening at this point with Hillary. Of course it will, should she survive and actually get into the general election. Well, that her opponents are going to bring all this stuff up, and we'll see what happens at that point. But
are you sure, John?
I'm sorry?
Are you sure, John? Would they actually bring it up? I mean, a Mitt Romney type certainly won't, John. A John McCain type certainly won't, because they have, both of those kind of candidates had an opportunity to do the same thing to dear Barack and chose not to.
Well, yeah, you might be right, Joe. I'm just at this point, I'm hoping for the best. Okay, I'm expecting the worst and hoping for the best.
sorry, I didn't want to bring you down there. I just
no, but even so, even in the primary cycle, we're going to see things, and we're going to hear things come out as certain candidates. I can see somebody like a Carly Fiorina. And like I said, Donald Trump, who, like I said, we still don't know if he's serious or not. But which, by the way, I was at the gym this morning, and they cranked up The View, and Donald Trump was the talk of the women on The View today. Oh. And everything from his bigotry towards China, but they just were taken so back that he would say something like, well, I just sold an apartment building to a Chinaman. Oh. And they're like, oh, how insensitive. What do you mean, how insensitive?
He's rich.
So you got somebody to buy it, and the Chinaman paid $15 million for it. How outrageous.
Oh, who forced him?
But then, then what it does is it digresses into the jokes about his hair and everything else, because that's all they have. That's all they have. They don't have anything of any substance. But anyway, this thing with Hillary Clinton now, she's out there, like I said, trying to walk things back. We've got the Clinton Foundation thing out there, which we still have not covered. I'm going to get to this, but with just so many other things coming up, and we're going to kind of weed our way through all this stuff.
Well, John, remember what Hillary said.
On what?
Do you remember what Hillary said about the emails?
Oh, she said that she had turned everything. I think you have a clip. Do you have a clip on that?
Yeah, hold on. Let me see.
Yeah. Let's hear it from the woman's mouth herself. This is Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So let's
about
just
the
remember
emails.
This.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
Okay, anything that in any way that would deal with her time as Secretary of State is in the proper hands, being handled, I guess, the proper way. Not knowing, didn't we find out one of the first things we found out was that she was supposed to turn this stuff all over before she left, but she's a special kind of government employee, exempt from
Hillary.
rules and regulations of everybody else.
Yeah, they're special. Yeah,
Very
they don't have
special.
to follow the rules.
Yeah, different kind of woman, different kind of government employee, different kind of public servant, in the fact that she doesn't have to. She had to be told to do what she should have known she was supposed to do anyways. I always find it amazing when you run into people at the top of a department or running a company or corporation, and you start talking to them about the nuts and bolts of their business or organization, and they have no clue. They have no clue what's going on, and you got to ask yourself, well, what are you doing in charge? Well, I guess I
am sick and tired.
Yeah, they must be. I think what it is they're the guys that provide the meat for the barbecues. I think that's how they end up in those positions. But the point being, the media is now beginning to, in some ways, little by little, beginning to address the failures of Barack Obama. And doing so, and now with some of this stuff coming out, like I said, his trade agreement currently right now, as of today, is in the toilet. As we just read, he has no control, has no policy. They don't know what they're doing with the Middle East. I think they just go to bed every night just hoping that there's some massive earthquake and everything just takes care of itself. And all this, there's no real... What he's doing is he's just trying to push that last piece of his agenda out there, trying to get just some other form of redistribution through this trade agreement, being able to bring in more illegals, being able to use government tax dollars, our tax dollars, to subsidize those that lose jobs or end up being underemployed because of jobs being taken by foreigners coming into the country. They're doing his best to try to create that new, quote-unquote, middle-class demographic that the Democrats so want and need to be able to retain power. So, all this said and done, lo and behold, right in the middle of all this, Hillary launches her campaign. Obama gets socked with the votes, and we find out that finally there is released emails on the situation in Benghazi. And when we first reported on this show, and I know there were other shows doing it, I remember Craig Andreessen from Right Side Patriots, him and Diane Sori did an extensive 5-day investigation, a show, 5 shows on this thing, 4 or 5 shows on this, and just laid everything bare. And we knew
can find them at the
that
Dryer
point,
Report.
huh?
You can find those at the Dryer Report.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Go to dryreport.com and you can pull those up. I'm sure they're there. Very informative. Some of the best work Craig ever did. And so what we knew after we got done reading this stuff and hearing about it is that there were arms being run through the Libyan embassy, and that was one of the reasons Ambassador Stevens had notified Clinton's department, the State Department, and said, we need more security over here. He knew something was brewing somewhere. He knew that there was the potential of people obtaining or getting their hands on those arms. And we believed, we speculated, and we said it on this show, and other shows have said it also, that what happened was simply this. They were told to stand down over there because this administration, in the middle of an election year, did not want it exposed that there was illegal arms being run. This is the Fast and Furious on steroids. They're over in the Middle East running guns to Syrian rebels in hopes of toppling the Syrian government. So that all was hanging there, and the media buried it. And, there was little mentions of it. The White House responded as, concocted scandals and everything else like that. And the media they made more about the hearings themselves as what the people wanted at the hearings, to destroy Obama, destroy Clinton, destroy the Democrat Party, rather than what actually took place and what transpired. Now it's coming out. So the timing of this is, I find, poetic justice, I guess. The fact that this stuff is now coming out, and it took somebody like Trey Gowdy to take over this investigation and bring it, because I don't think it would have ever come out into the public eye had Darrell Issa been continued to do what he was doing. Now, Joe, just before we get break here, we got about a minute or so. I want to, if you can recap yesterday, you brought up the fact that Issa basically was told to go home when he was in the halls of the hearing that was going on with Blumenthal.
Yeah, so Blumenthal was given a deposition in front of Trey Gowdy's committee yesterday, and ISA wanted to go there and check it out, and he walked over, and only to find out earlier in the day that they had recessed for lunch. So later on that day, ISA barges into the, just goes into the closed deposition, and because he wasn't invited, and lo and behold, he gets escorted out by none other than the chairman of the committee, Trey Gowdy himself. They have some hushed words in the hallway there outside the room where the deposition was being held, and then Mr. Issa kind of storms away and throws an empty soda can into the trash, kind of a little bit peeved, as it was described. And so, and then Mr. Gowdy goes back and says, hey, sorry for the interruption, and we moved along. And so I don't know if Mr. Issa is very happy with Mr. Gowdy and how things are going there, but why would Mr. Issa need to go in there anyway, since this is Mr. Gowdy's chairmanship and his committee? So what's he trying to stick his fingers in the pie for?
He thinks he's got the universal hall pass, that he can just go into anything that he wants to because, he's Daryl Issa, I guess, and I guess that's the way they think over there. So, anyway, we're gonna do a commercial here. We're gonna come back and continue this. We're gonna talk about the leaking. Not leaking. I guess today they were released. The memo. One memo in particular that I want to focus on in regards to Benghazi. And how this is going to play out, again, in regard to how Hillary Clinton is going to walk this back if the media really approaches it. One of the things I noticed was after yesterday, I had to dig to find these pieces. They weren't out there in the mainstream. They weren't out there with the Kim Kardashian butt flashes and everything else like they normally are. So I had to actually go digging and find them. So anyway, stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be right back.
Catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right. General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Okay, hey, we're back right here on the Conservative Syndicate. I am your host, John Matthews, and I am the Mad Prophet of the Airways. I got with me my co-host, Joe Hakos from Dryer Report, and we're talking about the timing of some of the things that are coming out, things that have been sitting back on the back burners here now for a couple of years. Some, I guess, in part because of it was planned out that way. I really believe we were talking about Darrell Issa being, asked to not come into the hearing yesterday with Blumenthal being run by Trey Gowdy, and I can't help but think to some degree that was probably intentional, that this thing has been drawn out. Issa comes out and a lot of times made statements about, how we're going to nail their butts to the wall just to have everything float off into oblivion somewhere for weeks and sometimes months at a time. So, but the point being, and the timing of it coming out now, I think is very interesting in terms of the fact that we're at the beginning of what in another 5 or 6 months is going to be, campaign season in high gear. So it's important that we take the time on this show to tie Clinton to all these things that she's tied to, which we know she's going to try to walk back or justify, distract, or blame somebody else in the process of doing all this. So we were talking about this revelation that the administration knew months in advance that something was coming down the pipe. And the reason they knew was because of the involvement that we had with running guns into the Libyan embassy to be funneled to Syrian rebels, and for the purpose of, I guess, helping to overthrow the Syrian administration regime. What do we refer to Syria? Was that a regime?
That's it's a definite like a monarchy because it was handed down from father to son. Right?
The president of Syria,
Bashir Assad was.
Yeah, I mean he's not like a king or anything like that, so he's got to be. They refer to these people over in that end of the world as either presidents or prime ministers or things like that. So
they're basically dictators. Let's just call them for what they really are.
Oh yeah, they just put a nice Republican or Democratic sounding title to their tyranny. Anyway, what we find here, Fox News correspondent Catherine Herridge found these documents or got her hands on them through Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch has been really watching this, and they sued and got access to these documents. So it says here, the Judicial Watch makes a statement that the Obama administration says it was a coincidence that the Benghazi attack occurred on 9/11. In fact, their intelligence said it wasn't a coincidence, and in fact, specifically, the attack occurred because it was 9/11. And this is coming from Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president. Now, he says there was another 2012 DIA memo which predicted the rise of ISIS. And this is in 2012. This is the election year. Remember the year here. We're talking about an election cycle. And this also came to the surface that there was the rise of ISIS and the establishment of actually 17 months ISIS had been in the forming stages. And we know that this was before President Barack Obama referred to them as the JV team. The third DIA memo, dated October 5th, 2012, this is exactly 1 month before the 2012 election, leaves no doubt that U.S. intelligence agencies knew that weapons were moving from Libya to Syria before the attack that killed 4 Americans. Now, this is from Judicial Watch. Now, here's what it goes on to say. I'm going to read you the actual, let me scroll down here a little bit and find it. Here it is. Okay. Okay, here it is. To the extent this information was withheld from personnel in the State Department in Tunisia or elsewhere in the area where U.S. State Department personnel were deployed, these lies, meaning that the Obama administration didn't know anything about anything, place these people in jeopardy. U.S. citizens in Tunisia should have been told honestly to be worried about and to watch out for terrorists, not demonstrators. Now, this is the actual memo, the content of the memo. The State Department Diplomatic Security Command Center knew that Benghazi was a terrorist attack that ended up killing the ambassador and it was unconscionable for the Obama State Department to lie in the emergency message for U.S. citizens, meaning they had sent a message over to the U.S. citizens over there, warning them, or supposed to be warning them, that something was coming down the pipe, at least to be on the watch. We now know that the DSCC drafted for the U.S. Embassy in Tunisia to publish. Fitton explained why he considered the statement to be a breach. It's no wonder the morale of the State Department officials overseas was decimated after Benghazi. Not only did the State Department and the Obama administration leave Ambassador Stevens and the other brave Americans who died without timely rescue and defense, the State Department with Benghazi tore up that implicit compact that certainly soldiers in the U.S. military have, not only that they wouldn't be left behind, but also that they won't be lied to about the dangers they are facing. So this whole idea, I think this is perhaps, Joe, one of the reasons Obama went after Bergdahl. I think this was a really lame attempt to try to restore the idea that in the military that you never leave anybody behind. Do you see any reasoning in that?
Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. You could say that. I think it had less to do with leaving Bergdahl behind and more about getting those guys out of Gitmo. I think it was more to that because, you give up one guy, Bergdahl, really? Really, if they wanted Bergdahl back, they could have got him back years prior to that. So, I was just holding on to that just for this one moment. I'm not so quite sure about that. I think it was more about Gitmo than anything else.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna actually, what I thought I was reading you the actual content of the memo. I was reading Linton's assessment. Here's the actual content. It's 2 paragraphs long. We'll get this done before we go to the break here. It says this is from the memo itself. I'm sorry for saying everything else. That was the assessment by Judicial Watch President Tom Linton. Now it says here, this is the actual content of the memo. Weapons from the former Libya military stockpiles were shipped from the port of Benghazi, Libya, to the port of Banias and the port of Borj Islam, Syria. The weapons shipped during late August 2012 were sniper rifles, RPGs, and 125mm and 155mm howitzer missiles. During the immediate aftermath of and following the uncertainty caused by the downfall of Gaddafi, the Gaddafi regime in October 2011 and up until early September 2012, weapons from the former Libya military stockpiles located in Benghazi, Libya were shipped from the port of Benghazi, Libya, to the ports of Banias and the port of Borj Islam, Syria. Repeat there. The Syrian ports were chosen due to the small amount of cargo traffic transiting these two ports. The ships used to transport the weapons, the ships used to transport the weapons were medium-sized and able to hold 10 or less shipping containers of cargo. So this is in the official memo of what was going on. Arms were being shipped from Libya, Benghazi, Libya, to ports over in Syria. And the Syrian ports were chosen because of their size and traffic. They didn't have a lot of traffic. People weren't going to pay attention to what they're doing. They chose small ships not to draw attention to what they were doing. So there's no doubt in this. They're talking about early part of 2012, and it started back in October 2011 when the Gaddafi regime was toppled, that there was something up, and then that is when all this began to happen. I guess Gaddafi being overthrown must have set something into motion, and they decided, okay, we got to do something about Syria. So the Obama administration not only knew, they were part of the plan. And that is what we need to keep in our forethought here as we have Hillary Clinton standing up across this country, walking around telling everybody that she'll do everything and anything to protect America and protect Americans. She won't do anything more than that which will benefit her any more than her current president will do to protect himself or to advance his agenda, whatever in God's name that agenda is. I have no idea what Obama's agenda is in the Middle East anymore, other than to just be silent and not piss off Islam. That's the only thing I can think anymore. So anyway, we're going to, at the top of the hour here, it's time for the Edwards Notebook. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. We'll have Bob Cardoza with us the next hour. Stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be right back.
Once again, President Obama proves he is more concerned about appeasing terrorists and illegal aliens than protecting our republic from enemies both foreign and domestic. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, the United States has endured past presidents who were not fully up to the task of defeating our enemies or going full bore when it comes to protecting our borders. But I must say, no prior commander-in-chief comes close to the disgustingly blatant disregard for protecting our republic or helping other nations to overcome those who mean to kill, steal, and destroy. To this day, the White House occupier has not approved or seriously proposed one single measure that would benefit or strengthen the United States of America. For example, the United States has an abysmal record when it comes to negotiating and participating in trade agreements. NAFTA and GATT quickly come to mind. In fact, every trade agreement officially sanctioned by government has led to even greater U.S. deficits with their trading partners. I would propose to first eliminate all barriers to trade between the 50 states. For example, insurance companies would be free to ply their trade as far as the free market and success allows them. The government is not a private sector business and was not meant to be engaged in such activities because the nature of government makes it an impediment to such things as authentic free trade. Secondly, I would propose that American-based companies would be free to engage in economic activities with individuals and other companies located within any allied nation. Of course, the government should have the resolve and the power to protect the interest of American companies, for example, from sudden nationalization or seizure threats. The American government must be persuaded to refrain from negotiating so-called free trade agreements. I cannot recall any government-negotiated free trade agreement that has benefited the United States. Again, those government agreements have either increased or produced American deficits with foreign trading and or business partners. Let us now view the important issue of securing our borders. For years before the current disaster in the White House, America has failed to adequately secure our borders and stem the tide of unappreciative illegal immigrants. Some estimates, including mine, puts the possible number of illegals living off the fat of the land at taxpayer expense at around 30 million. Within their ranks are possibly a substantial number of Muslim terrorists who are awaiting orders to do major damage. It is believed that one or possibly two major American cities could soon be affected by some type of terrorist activity. ISIS terrorists have already threatened to wreak havoc in America and even harm President Obama. Yet the president has done everything imaginable to reduce and weaken our military. He has consistently refused to upgrade weapons systems and has drastically reduced troop numbers to the point that America no longer has the capability to fight two major conflicts simultaneously. So now, Russia, China, and Muslim terrorist groups no longer fear or at least respect U.S. military might. In fact, China now has more influence in South America than the United States because our Obamonomics economy inhibits a powerful forward thrust of American influence. Combine that with Mr. Obama's disdain for United States power and influence in the world, and you have a recipe for disaster. The late President Ronald Reagan said it best: we can only secure world peace through strength. Have you noticed that as America weakens, the world continues to unravel politically, relationally, and economically amongst nations? To sum it up, we must not only change directions politically in the upcoming elections, the Republicans in the legislative branch have not been consistently holding up their end of the bargain when it comes to governing. Often they have allowed President Obama to continue almost unchallenged in his quest to diminish the United States of America. If America is to be rescued from utter demotion to the lower ranks amongst nations, the status quo will not suffice. There must be a spiritual rebirth and a reconnection with the presence of God. Providential guidance was the major force in the establishment of the United States of America. Have you noticed how America has gradually deteriorated? The more she rejected the same God the Founding Fathers credited for the ability to overcome the British Empire, the more we have struggled as a nation. In recent years, we lost our way and the wisdom of God. But if we humble ourselves and pray and seek God's face and turn from our wicked ways, then will He hear from heaven and will forgive our sins and heal our land. If not, the decline of America will be our legacy. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com.
You're listening to the Shake and Wake Radio Network, where the truth is all that matters, and the truth will make you free. ShakeandWakeRadio.com.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right, General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Good evening, America, and those listening around the world. It's time for The Conservative Syndicate with your host, John Matthews, self-ordained, politically incorrect, mad prophet of the airways. The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most knowledgeable activists and pundits today that together seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement with those seeking the truth regarding the similarities and differences between the religion of politics and the politics of religion.
We have put in place the toughest ethics laws and toughest transparency rules of any administration in history. In history.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever.
Did you mislead Americans about taxes, about keeping your plan, in order to get the bill passed?
No, I did not. All you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is.
For some reason, people keep on being surprised when I do what I said I was going to do. I'm doing it because I said I was going to do it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
And now, your host, John Matthews.
Okay, hey, we are back right here on the Conservative Syndicate, and I am your host, John Matthews, mad prophet of the airways, on a mission from God, and that mission, of course, is to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state, and we do that on this show by espousing the conservative gospel and exposing the lameness of the leftist agenda. And I hope you enjoyed the first hour. We've got more coming up for you right now. Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live will be joining us, hopefully in just a few minutes here. He's on the air right now, and so I know he's got to close his show down, and he hops over here. And, of course, my partner in crime, co-host Joe Hakos from Dryer Report. We were talking before the break, before we the top of the last hour here, about the situation over Benghazi, that it has now come to light, or at least been documented. We know that it's been out there for quite a while, but now there is actual documentation that proves that the Obama administration not only knew what was going on over in Benghazi, they knew it weeks and in some cases months in advance, but that the speculation that the American citizens over there, including our ambassador, were sacrificed basically to prevent it being found out that the Libyan compound over there, the Libyan embassy over there, was being used as a conduit by which they were running arms through the consulate into Syria for the rebels there. And so we now know that's the case. I mean, there's documentation now, so you can't run away from it anymore. And Joe had brought up the mention. We were talking about what is it that Obama wants out of the Middle East, and I had made it just off the top of my head, just made a comment about the fact that maybe he just didn't want to let anybody know what's going on, or he just wants to pacify what's going on over in the Middle East and just kind of hopefully hope that it all goes away by itself. And Joe mentioned the fact that he thought it was more about exchanging prisoners. Oh, wait, that's what it was. We were talking about what was the Bergdahl deal, and Joe had mentioned about the fact that it was more about the Gitmo, the prisoners in Gitmo. And Joe, you had a little interesting thing here. You sent it to me here. It was a little summary of what had been happening over there. And the last paragraph of it points to the fact that the person who was behind all this activity, or a lot of this activity, did I read that right? Was one of the prisoners that were released out of Gitmo?
Yeah, it was one of the. It was an attack on to destabilize the newly formed government in Libya, and the president reported to. The Libyan president reported to his prime minister and general chief of staff. The general chief of staff reported to the prime minister and president. My bad. That one of the guys that had been fighting with the Ansar al-Sharia fighters in the region, and those are the guys who attacked the Benghazi consulate, was captured, had been killed, and he had been previously captured and was in place at Guantanamo, and obviously was released by the Obama administration and rejoined the fight, as they say.
Okay, so obviously his ID bracelet was missing.
Yeah, he didn't check in with his parole officer.
Didn't check in AOL, so okay, but that this is the kind of stuff that I think now is going to start coming out more and more, and I don't know how Hillary's going to deal with this. Obama's at that place now where he can just basically throw up his hands and say, "What are you going to do about it?" But Hillary's going to have to deal with it, so we'll see how that goes. But having said that, I want to bring on Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live. And Bob did an excellent job last week of educating us. The economics for dummies, I like to refer to it, and explain to us. The phrase I use is the evolution of our trading system. He started out explaining to us about. Originally, it was all about bartering. You traded services, and that's how everybody got along and survived. Then he brought up the fiat system, which is the assigning value to currency. And the United States, I guess, at one time, I don't know if we are anymore, but I'm going to assume that we still are to some degree, the measure by which value is assigned because of the way a government runs their economy. That's my understanding, that the United States being as prosperous as it has kind of been the gauge by which value of currency has been assigned. But now we're moving into this era where it's really all about trade much more than it is about currency or anything else. And so he did a very good job of that. So how are you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm doing good, John. How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, we're hearing you just fine. We're hearing you fine. And I guess before we kick in, I just want to give you a couple of moments here because I know this is a big week for you. You're finally getting your simulcast going?
Yep, we started it off today. Everything was good except me, but you have to get used to all the new stuff and all the things that are going on. And I actually, John, because I use a similar system to you as far as Skype for people to call in on, and I had somebody call in while I was talking to somebody else, and I wound up disconnecting them. I gotta learn how to do that and not disconnect anybody. But other than that, the show went on really, really well. I was really happy with it.
Well, that's why they call it live radio. You got to deal with all the. I started the show out today. I had my volumes all cranked up because I had a friend send me a video from Germany, and he did some recording on it, and the volume was really bad. So I cranked everything up, and I kick on the show here, and I'm redlining everything, and I'm telling Joe to turn his microphone down, and it's actually me. And it took a minute for me to realize, oh, man, yeah, I cranked everything up. So that's what happens is, your first 30 seconds was like, even for me, was very, very loud.
Yeah, it was awkward. You have to, you set up with different equipment and everything else is a little bit different. So it was exciting for me today. I really enjoyed it. Having so many things happening at the same time and not too awful much going wrong. So that was a good thing, right? Unlike what's going on in the government today.
So, Bob, what the lesson John is trying to explain to is you blame the other guy.
Yeah.
Joe, it's interesting. I always blame the other guy. I think I was telling John, I saw this cartoon the other day, and it reminded me of me. I'm so old. I remember when Snap, Crackle, and Pop was a breakfast cereal. Now it's what I hear when I get up in the morning out of bed.
Yeah, I understand that one.
So you know what? I didn't get last week, John. I didn't get to fully explain what China was doing to hurt the United States economically.
Well, Bob.
Okay, we want to get to that, and where we want to end up tonight, Bob. I want to put this out there. Mm-hmm. Where we really want to end up tonight is somewhere in our dialogue. Because it's very important that you explain to us what's going on with China, because they're a major player in this trade deal that everybody wants that actually hasn't been written yet. But we want to know, at the end of the day, we want to know if we had not changed from the gold standard to currency, would we have the deficit we have today, and how would that affect this trade agreement, or would the trade agreement even be necessary? That's the major question that we're trying to answer here, and I'm certainly in favor of going through the process of learning so that we understand the answer. So you have the mic, and
okay, I'll try and answer all that. That's a big subject to try and do here in 45 minutes or so.
Do it.
But basically, I'm not gonna repeat everything that I had talked about last week, because I think that redundancy wouldn't be fair to your listeners. But I do want to talk about the fact that when we were leaving the air last week, we were just getting to the fact that how was China's economic situation hurting the United States' situation, and it came down to this: when China actually winds up with what they're doing right now, devaluing the yuan, which is exactly what they're doing. What winds up happening is the United States dollar becomes more and more valuable. to them at least. So what winds up happening then is that the people in China, even if United States goods were to be available, which there aren't, not many anyway, they couldn't afford to buy them because the cost of American goods, because of the value of the dollar and what we're paying people here, would be too high for the average person there to be able to afford. And so as a result, nobody is buying from the United States because our dollar, the cost of us manufacturing, the cost of the goods that are there, plus the tariffs that they place on everything we have, prices our goods out of the marketplace. So we have a restraint of trade rather than a trade deal. Now, I agree with you, and I agree with a lot of people in that I really don't like any trade deal I can't see first. I don't understand the justification of us having a trade deal that we can't see. What should be so secret about it? There shouldn't be any secrets. It's just a matter of, well, how do you level the playing field? How do you level the cost of manufacturing? How do you get rid of some of these unfair tariffs for import and export and level that playing field so that all countries can buy and sell to each other? That's the balance of trade that we really need to have. Now, unfortunately, in the United States, we don't really manufacture anything. We innovate, but we don't manufacture anything. And, you know, if you go to China today or you go to, I suppose you still find some American vehicles, but only on those billionaires, those really, really rich people that can afford to get anything that's American or made in America because of the tariffs and the costs of those things. The average person just can't afford it. And so that's what's actually happening when it comes into that trade deal. Now, to get into your question about what would the deficit be had we stayed on the gold standard, you know, the interesting thing is that when we were on the gold standard, the dollar was worth $1. Everybody else's currency was worth something else based on what the dollar was worth, because every dollar that we printed was backed up by gold. So the dollar was worth 100 pennies. It was worth one full dollar. The dollar was never worth $1.10 or $1.80 or is the thing you see today. The dollar was always the dollar, and everybody else was a barometer around that dollar. When we went off the gold standard and we actually went back to, as you had mentioned before, a fiat standard, that's where we started to print money just when we needed it. And every dollar more that we printed than what we actually had agreed to in the beginning devalued the remaining dollars. It's sort of like this, you know, if you bought stock in the stock market, John, and you bought 100 shares. Let me change that. Let's say that you had a corporation and the corporation was authorized by the Secretary of State to issue 100 million shares of stock. However, they only issued 50 million shares. That 50 million shares that they issued represent 100% of the company. So that those 50 million shares were worth a lot of money. Now, when the company decides to issue the remaining 50 million shares that they didn't send out, and they issue those out and they distribute those, let's say they do it in stock splitting or they do it in dividend payoffs, things like that, what that does is it devalues those shares. So that original 50 million shares, if we put these other 50 million shares out there, are worth half of what they were before. The same thing is what's going on in the monetary fund today. So that what would have happened if we wanted to maintain the strength of the economy today, and it's unlikely that it's going to happen, but what would have happened had we stayed on the gold standard is that the Congress would not have been allowed to print more money. So the dollar would have been strong, and it would have been backed up by the gold reserves that we have, and the deficit would only be bad if we had gone out and borrowed money, because that's what creates the deficit. We're spending more money than we're bringing in. You have to separate the deficit from the debt. Deficit is hey, I earn $2 a year, but I'm spending $3. Then you have a $1 deficit. The debt is an accumulation of all the deficits that balance out throughout the year. So that deficit would still have been there if we decided to go to war and spend $3 trillion in Afghanistan and in the Middle East on war, and we didn't want to use our reserves for that. then we would have had to borrow the money. When we borrowed the money, in this case, we owe $1.8 trillion to China, and we're just paying interest on it. We're not paying any principal. What that wound up doing was increasing our national debt. And we were spending more because of the war than what we were actually bringing in, which created the deficit. Did that kind of answer your question?
Okay, so you're saying then that the value of our currencies, we're assuming we're going back and saying, okay, we're staying on the gold standard. Mm-hmm. The value of our dollar would have remained the value of the dollar, but what the deficit actually is not the devaluation of any form of currency. It is borrowing in excess of what you actually have. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Okay, so in spite of the fact, now let's just take it just a step further. If we were still on the gold standard and we're sitting here with the value of a dollar, meaning a dollar, even though we were borrowing the money, the deficit still would not have increased as much, because I understand the real problem with the deficit is that as the value of the dollar goes up, as you're telling me it is, then the interest rates also go up. So it's the interest rates on top of the principal borrowed that is creating, it's duplicating or multiplying the deficit, just the interest rate. Am I right?
What's happening here is because let's just say that our national debt was $1, John. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now our dollar is worth 50 cents. That's the problem.
But if you're saying to me that we have that dollar, and in essence we've already spent that dollar, and so we have to borrow another dollar.
That's right. And in the interim, our dollar becomes worth 50 cents.
Okay, okay. And then we have interest on top of that. Does the interest play into the devaluation?
The interest certainly does play into it, because the interest is based on the country where we borrowed the money, the strength of their currency.
Okay, and that interest also becomes debt.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can take a dollar, we borrow a dollar, which actually devalues the dollar we have by 50%, and now we're paying interest on top of that other dollar, which is now also only worth 50% or 50 cents, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what happens here is exactly what would happen with a credit card. If you're only making the minimum payment, the interest on the amount that you're borrowing will get to the point where you can never pay the debt off.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so irrelevant to, but I'm not so sure. I guess I'm saying if we were still on the gold standard, would the amount of the deficit relatively still be the same? Just because, they would just keep borrowing. The
more they borrow, the issue before was the dollar was the standard, and so when we would use our dollars to purchase things worldwide, we were getting deals all over the world because our dollar was the standard for everything else, and our dollar was worth more than other currencies. Now that you have the pound and the euro that are worth substantially more than the dollar is, that would never have happened under the gold standard.
Aha!
Wow. Say that again.
I say that if our dollar were supported by gold, so that for every dollar that we printed, we had a nugget of gold that made it worth the dollar. Then we were actually getting we were doing discount buying all over the world, because no one else's currency was worth what the United States dollar was. The dollar was a barometer against that.
Wow.
So what wound up happening is that now we can't do that. We don't have that trade. We don't get those deals, and those companies are no longer hungry for United States dollars because they're not worth much.
So when we get to this phrase, let's coin this phrase here, let's bring this phrase up. When we talk about the debt ceiling being raised and everything, and the politicians try to sell us on the idea of the full faith and credit of the United States, there really is no full faith and credit.
No, they're kidding. They're kidding the American people. The full faith and credit of the United States. All they continue to do is to print more money and go into more debt. Here's the thing about full faith and credit.
Yeah, so we say the full faith.
When an issue comes before the Congress for budgeting and for payment, when they approve, let's just say that you're an independent contractor with the United States, and they give you a $50 million contract, John. and it's approved by Congress. It's part of the budget. It's in there. When they approved that, they accepted the responsibility to pay that bill. Now, when they don't pay that bill because they don't have the money or for whatever reason that they don't have it, or they don't raise the debt limit, then what they're saying is they're not good to their word. That's the full faith and credit of the United States. You can't approve the spending and then not pay the bill. If you approve the spending and that spending results in more deficit, by law, you should be, by morals and ethics, have to be required to raise the debt limit to cover the spending you approved.
Okay, so we're locked into this robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
We're borrowing from somebody else to pay somebody else off.
But the thing is that the United States is no different than your household or mine or Joe's. In realistically, you and I aren't allowed to spend more money than we have. If you write checks against money you don't have in the bank, somebody with a badge and a gun is going to come knock on your door. Right. The United States continues to write checks for money they don't have in the bank. They've got the sickest budget system I ever saw. We need to have a balanced budget amendment so that the United States is required on an annual basis to spend or budget more money than it actually anticipates bringing in.
Yeah, I got it. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to get back to this thing you were talking about, China and other foreign countries not being able to buy our goods because of the cost, because that triggered something in my head. I want to ask you some questions about that. We've got Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live, and stay with us right here at Conservative Syndicate. Right now it's time for Moments of Madness. We'll be right back. Today on Moments of Madness. Among the fanfare heaped upon the Olympian formerly known as Bruce Jenner by the likes of Barack Obama, who apparently thinks it takes courage to cross-dress, and the presenters of the Arthur Ashe Award, who believe it's more courageous to don gay apparel than to recognize an athlete like double amputee Noah Galloway, a 33-year-old former U.S. soldier who lost his arm and leg while serving in Iraq, but now competes in CrossFit events, runs marathons, and has competed in the 58-hour death race. Little has been said about an attempt to have the IOC strip Jenner of the gold medal he won in the 1976 Montreal Olympics in its response to a petition that made the rounds, presumably in some homophobic redneck bar. IOC Communications Director Mark Adams relayed to Yahoo News, Bruce Jenner won his gold medal in the 1976 Olympic Games, and there is no issue for the IOC. Given the past history of the Olympic scandals involving hormone-saturated athletes that attempted to either enhance their performance or change their genetic makeup in hopes of representing their countries as superior human specimens, I tossed this around in my head and I said, hey, that was then, this is now. Good call by the IOC. No harm, no foul. I smiled to myself, acknowledging my empathy had won out. This would have opened a whole new can of worms. But then I read the second paragraph of the June 4th article on Yahoo, and well, my conservative reasoning once again trumped liberal logic. The article reads, in 2012, the IOC announced it would allow transgender athletes to compete against their chosen peers, assuming they meet 3 criteria. The athlete must have had gender reassignment surgery. The athlete must have legal recognition of his or her assigned gender in his or her home country. And the athlete must have completed at least 2 years of hormone therapy. When you consider the advancement of LGBT activism in just the last 3 years, it is quite mad. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts now embrace homosexuality, making one wonder why their organizations still sport genetic labeling. Homecoming queens can now really be queens. Beauty pageants have redefined inner beauty to mean that which is genetically enhanced outwardly, and girls can now pitch in Little League or legally touch a boy's privates as she takes the handoff from center. Not to mention, on any given day, we no longer know who is showering with who in our public schools. Sometimes it takes something like the IOC or someone like the new and improved Bruce Jenner to make you realize that something is just not right, both politically and morally. If nothing else, it certainly gives a whole new perspective on the phrase, he throws like a girl. Oh, wait a minute, that is a girl. This is John Matthews for Moments of Madness.
You're listening to the Shake and Wake Radio Network, where the truth is all that matters, and the truth will make you free. ShakeandWakeRadio.com.
Okay, hey, we're back right here on the Conservative Syndicate, and we are so glad that you stuck with us today, and I hope you stick with us for the rest of the time we're on the air. We've got Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live giving us just a very much needed lesson on economics. And Bob, you had, this idea of the gold standard and a currency. It's not so much then the type of economic system that we're dealing with here. It is the people running the system that
Absolutely.
is the problem.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we were on the gold standard, or if we, on the currency standard, or as long as we had people that said, okay, you can't spend more than you've got, then we'd be in okay. Our shape we'd be in great shape, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
And so we've got people that are just deciding that. Of course, we've got a lot of people in Congress today, and certainly one in the White House, that've never run a business, never had to really balance a checkbook, and don't really understand, this concept that just because you have paper in front of you doesn't mean you can write another check. But you had said something earlier about the Chinese. We were talking about China, and you had said that in China, most Chinese people would not be able to purchase goods being exported from here to China simply because they don't have enough money to buy it. Because of the cost of the goods sold, there's really nothing for them to buy. And I was immediately flashed to a statement that Donald Trump made yesterday during his announcement of his presidential intent to run for president. He said that, you don't see too many people driving Chevys over in Japan. And, that popped up in my mind, and I was just thinking, okay, so if we're exporting goods to these countries, but they're not being bought, what's happening to them?
Well, here, that's a great question, and the thing is because you bring up Japan, and Japan works very much the same way as China does, except that they have a higher cost for labor, not much higher, but they got a higher cost of labor, but they have a better saving mentality. In China, the average Chinese worker makes less than $6 a day. So, when you talk about sending one of our Arrow shirts over there for $20 or $25, you're talking about 5 days worth of wages for somebody in China. Well, on top of that, China is going to throw a tariff on that of another $10 probably. So it just puts it way out of the spending rate for Chinese people. In China, whether it be that Arrow shirt or if it be a car or whatever it might be, China is more apt to through the government buy technology from the United States and then reverse engineer it and copy it and send it out there cheaper because they're paying their people 33 cents an hour instead of $33 an hour, or more.
But yet when the cars come over here, they sell for more than American cars.
Well, it's they do, and it's a profit issue. And here's what winds up going on, because you could actually buy it there for less money. Matter of fact, you've heard the stories, John. I remember when I was in college, and my professor was saying that every 3 years or so, he goes to Europe, and he would buy either a BMW or a Mercedes, depending on where he was at in Europe, and that he would save enough money to pay for his trip. Because of the cost savings there, and it's the same. And even though he shipped the car back, so the same thing happens when you go to China or Japan. Now, Japan, under a trade agreement we have with them, they're not allowed to add a tariff to imports from the United States, and yet they're doing it, and we're not doing a doggone thing about it. The same thing happens when we're sending things into China. They add the tariffs. The Chinese people can't, because they don't want to owe on a balance of trade the United States. They want their people to buy their goods that are manufactured there. That's the big thing you hear about here in the United States. Buy American, buy made in USA. They want the American people to buy only American. Why? Really not because they want them to buy American. They just don't want them to buy foreign.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. I'm going through hypotheticals that are flapping through my head here. Let's say, hypothetically here, we determine that, like I said, you bring a Toyota over here from Japan, or I think in some cases what they do is they they export all the parts, and then sometimes they're assembled over here. I think Toyota has a plant. It used to be out here in Carson. They moved it down to Texas because of the taxes and everything. And so they export the parts, and then they bring it over here and they actually assemble it here. Then they put it out on the market. Now, a Toyota, on an average, I'm just pulling some very round numbers out here, probably costs anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 more than if you went down and bought a Ford or a Chevy that was constructed here, with also some of the parts coming from overseas. But the point being is that why do we continue to import cars? If it costs more, why don't we just manufacture cars here and keep that cost down? I guess the question I'm asking is, why do we involve ourselves in trade deals like this if we're not benefiting from it?
So here's the difference, John. We're not importing Toyotas. They're exporting Toyotas. And so they're controlling those costs. And when they export those Toyotas, they're exporting them in pieces because they can ship a lot more Toyotas in pieces in these containers than they can assembled cars.
Right.
Now, they send those to free trade zones in the United States where they do not have to pay any tariff or any tax or any import or anything because it's going into a free trade zone. That is where the manufacturing takes place. Now, when you were talking about the Toyota plant in Texas that went in there, that plant wasn't determined to go into Texas until Texas agreed to create a free trade zone for them to ship their goods into where they would not be taxed or have any import fees to them.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. What doesn't make sense to me is why we would continue to receive exports from Japan in their crates, in pieces, and assemble the stuff here. If the cost of assembling it here is so much greater, why don't we just do our own stuff? I mean, and the bottom line question here is I'm trying to understand as you're explaining this to me is why do we even involve ourselves in trade agreements like this?
Hello, Congress.
I'm sorry?
Hello, Congress.
Okay, so somebody somewhere has got to be getting some kind of kickback on this stuff.
Well, you know what happens here, John, when you talk about importing these things, and it's gone all haywire. That's why the economies, not just here in the United States, but the economies all over the world are actually having a problem, and all of them are looking at the United States for a solution. The solution to the economical problem that we're having worldwide is some kind of balance of trade. Remember that when we are valuing dollars and doing those things, it's not like the United States is sending off dollars to these countries. They accumulate a balance sheet on paper and say, okay, the United States owes us $3 million. And the United States says, Germany owes us $2 million. Well, now we owe Germany $1 million because of the balance there. So the balance of trade is trying to make sure that we are importing and exporting a balanced amount of goods that level off for the economies of all countries. Right now, we have an unfair balance. The unfair balance takes place in China and Korea and Japan, mostly there, because they have the lower costs of labor that's going on. And so what winds up happening is they're promoting more goods. When was the last time you went to the store to buy a suit, buy a shirt, buy shoes, buy, as a matter of fact, even pharmaceuticals or healthcare goods? Heck, how about produce? When's the last time you saw that it was actually produced here in the United States?
Well, I just did that. I bought 5 suits about 6 months ago, but they were all made in, I believe, Italy. And I paid. I paid
Bob.
I'll tell you, they were made in Italy. They were probably shipped to Italy with the Italian labels on them.
Yeah, well, I imagine they were probably sewn in China.
Yeah.
And then, shipped over someplace where they sew. That's what they do with Levi's. They make them in China now, and then they ship them to the Philippines and put the labels on them, and then ship them over here.
Yeah.
So Bob.
Yeah.
Just to give you a heads up, our United States trade deficit right now is $728 billion
per year.
Right now, just now. Going up as we speak, but $728 billion. Yeah. Our trade deficit with China right now is $356 billion.
So I want to let's put this in perspective. What Joe just said. What you're telling me, Bob, then, is that we have all these trade agreements on an international level, and the idea that we might be getting screwed by China and Japan, and we have such a large trade deficit, is supposed to be offset by what we're exporting to European countries.
It's supposed to be it's in the balance of trade, so that maybe we're importing more from China and from Korea, and maybe we're exporting more to the European Union than what China and Korea is, and so in the mix, it's all supposed to balance out.
Okay, but then when you come into these issues like the European euro going down the tubes, or the Greek economy dying, and all these other things, now all of a sudden there is no trade with those people, right?
Right. Well, the biggest issue here is Greece, because Greece is on the brink of bankruptcy. If they don't get the International Monetary Fund to loan them more money, or give them more money, actually, they're actually going to go bankrupt. If Greece goes bankrupt, then they go off the European Union. Then the amount of that fiat money we were talking about before that was actually issued at a value to Greece and their debts is going to cripple the European Union, and you'll see the euro go to become worthless.
Right.
That'll destroy world economy.
Yeah, and then you talk about countries like England who are threatening to pull out of the union, which would further devalue the euro. I mean, I can just see that just setting off an avalanche.
Well, England actually has maintained the pound as their currency, not the euro.
Oh, okay.
But the biggest problem you see there is Germany, and Germany is the country that really controls the International Monetary Fund, and so England is going to be pretty healthy. And if you look at the pound today, it's worth almost twice what the dollar is. So their economy is still quite strong. Of course, it's sort of, John, it's the same thing as if you went to New York, you'd make more money because it costs you a whole lot more money to live. So your lifestyle hasn't really gotten any better. The same thing happens if you go to England. You make more money, but your lifestyle's no better because everything costs so god awful much more money than what you're accustomed to.
Okay,
now, what winds up happening is that England is going to be in pretty good shape if Greece goes under, but the rest of the European Union, you're talking about Portugal, and you're talking about Germany, and you're talking about Ireland, and you're talking about I'm just coming off the top of my head. Italy.
I know that Ireland is already on the verge of bankruptcy if they haven't declared it. I think I even heard that they had. We got to go to a break here. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live. Stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. Don't go away.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right. General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first, and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. Hey, we are back right here on the Conservative Syndicate. I am your host, John Matthews, Mad Prophet of the Airways, with my co-host, Joe Hakos from Dryer Report. And we have with us Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live doing his weekly segment. You know, Bob, you gave me a lot of information here, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed. It's hard to digest all this stuff. And what I want to do is if I can, at this point, I want to lighten it up a little bit because I'm going to have to digest some of this stuff. I want to continue this conversation because I can't think of anything right now more important than we understand what's going on, in particular because of this attempt by, I guess Joe was mentioning earlier, the House is going to try to push through this trade bill again. I don't know if they're going to succeed. I don't think they will. But if this thing does go through, it's going to be a major piece of Obama's redistribution agenda. And there's elements in here. Next week we're going to talk a little bit more detail about the adjustment agreement and the service agreement. There's elements in this thing that the trade agreement itself hasn't even been written yet. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on out there. We really need to get our dollars and cents in the right columns in order to really understand what's going on here. So, but I thought I'd line it up by getting your take here on the announcements by Jeb Bush and Donald Trump that they're officially now in the race. And give me your take on what you see.
Oh, good Lord.
Come on, Bob.
Okay, so here's the deal. If I could forget everything that I have witnessed with Donald Trump, then I suppose I could get a little excited because he's a successful businessman. He understands budgets. He understands programming. He understands negotiations. He understands profitability and bottom line. He understands setting out goals and tasks for people and making them toe the mark with it. He fully, or at least he talks a good game. He understands that immigration is a big issue and that we can't just allow these people to send the worst that they have available to the United States. So, when I listened to his announcement yesterday, and if I were not so, if I was not so unsure of his word, that would have sounded really refreshing. Then we've got Jeb Bush out there, who is running away from his family history, and who is he's got a lot of money, but he's really not doing, if you look at it, really not doing that great in the polls, and I'm not so sure that he's even doing as great in the polls. I think Scott Walker is actually ahead of him in the polls, and so you look at what's going on there. I personally, if we're talking about that, I personally don't think Jeb Bush would be good for America. You're gonna jump all over me in a second. If Donald Trump was real, and if he was telling the truth, and if he actually financed his own run for the presidency and wasn't a bought, paid for guy, takes me back to the era of Perot, right? Then I could see where that could happen because, the lobbyists today in the United States are what's keeping us from being progressive and moving ahead. We really should be the strongest economy in the world. We really should be the strongest country in the world. There's no excuse for the things that are going on. So that part of what Donald Trump says is absolutely true. Whether or not he would actually follow through and do the things he says he would do, well, I haven't seen him follow through and do anything he said he would do up till now.
Well, you actually are echoing what Joe said yesterday. You want to comment on that, Joe?
Well, what Bob is saying is exactly what millions of us out here saying. Okay, Donald, if you really were going to do this, one of the proof's in the pudding. Go ahead and put that machine together and go ahead and do it. If it's just more talk and you want to be bluster and waste people's time, then that's all you're doing, and you should get the hell out of the way and let some serious people do it. But that being said, I would really, what he says, yeah, I would love to have that. But you know what? I have my doubts as well. We've been here before.
God knows that politicians never break their promises, do they, Joe?
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, the
and you know
thing
what?
here with me,
The thing is if Oprah Winfrey winds up being his vice presidential candidate, they're not going to have to run. They're going to just buy the country.
That ain't going to happen anyway.
I know. Well, but I'll tell you one thing. It's interesting. If Donald Trump really does run, if he does put his papers in, if this is not a PR stunt that he's pulling off, this I would think would throw Carly Fiorina right out of the box, because the only thing she's got going for her was the one-time CEO of Hewlett Packard. She's got nothing else going for her.
Well, that and they're gendered.
Yes.
Yeah. So because that's that's really what the other side is. They got to be historic. It's time for a female president.
Well, see how great would it be? You get Donald Trump, who is a real estate magnate and a self-proclaimed worth $9 billion, and you get Oprah Winfrey, who's worth God only knows how much, and now you've got not only a female but a black female vice president.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? Really? Well, that's if she's saying that she's a black female, because you can be whoever you want to be, Bob. You can be whoever you want to be. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you right now, Bob, you're talking about Bush. Yeah, he might be running away from his brother and his daddy, but he's using their machine.
Oh, yeah.
And they are paving the road, buddy.
Yeah.
That machine is paving the road.
Well, you know what I don't understand, Joe, is it wasn't that long ago that I had heard that Hillary Clinton was going to have $1 billion and Jeb Bush was going to have $1 billion. And then yesterday I hear, no, it's $100 million. What is the number?
Well, the number is out of its flipping mind to begin with. Are you kidding me? He's got $100 million. He just announced yesterday, 2 days ago. Excuse me. That's an issue right there that I have. And if he somehow doesn't get the nomination, or Hillary somehow doesn't get the nomination, that's going to happen. Where's his money go to?
Okay, so let me explain, because you're gonna really hate the whole world here in a second. And I know I've only got about 4 minutes left. Here's the thing: when Jeb Bush says and Hillary Clinton says they have about $100 million apiece, that's because that $1 billion we talked about was all money that was raised prior to their candidacy that went to their super PACs that they had already instructed while they still could before they had run for the announced their candidacy. And so that $1 billion is sitting in those super PACs with instructions of how to use it. And the $100 million, yep, that's what's in their candidacy fund for their personal use.
Well, guess what, Bob? That super PAC is what Hillary Clinton was railing against on Saturday.
Sure, she was against it, Joe. And then she justifies it by saying, well, I have to do it because that's what everybody else is doing, and I have to level the playing field, right?
No, she's going to just have it all donated to her charity in the Clinton Foundation, which is her Bill and Chelsea.
Yeah, and and here's the interesting thing: the super PACs, that money really doesn't belong to them, and it gets redistributed, I would guess, to the party somewhere down the road, or maybe redistributed back to the people to put it in there.
Okay,
the money that they don't spend on their campaign,
here, guys,
and that's usually a deficit anyway, but the money they don't spend on their campaign, truth is, that stays under their control, even if they don't win.
Well, Bob, you should tell us about what's under your control.
We're out of time. We're running out of time here.
You need a longer show, John.
I want to give Bob a chance to plug his show. Go for it, man.
Okay, you can listen to Robert Cardoza live on the street at the intersection of business and politics every Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. You can go to my website. That's the easiest place to get it at robertcardozalive.com. But we're on all kinds of stations, and I'm happy to say that on Fridays now we're on 365 Live and Roar 1776 Radio. We're on from 4 to 6 p.m. and then again Saturday morning from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. If you listen to that one, you know what, guys? I need to get you a good book to read or something.
All right. Outstanding, my man. Outstanding. I appreciate it as always, Bob.
Hey, thank you, John. Thanks, Joe. I enjoyed talking to you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, guys, we're done for the week. We'll be back on Monday, 5 p.m. out here in the West Coast. 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and every zone in between and around the world. So we'll see you and hear from you next week. Have a good weekend, and don't forget, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It only matters how many times you get up. God bless you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Conservative Syndicate, the globally syndicated, politically incorrect talk show that seeks to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. We want to make you aware you can find and access all of our show archives at our website, theconservativesyndicate.net, as well as our broadcast stations and times. That's the conservativesyndicate.net. We so appreciate you taking time to tune in, and we so look forward to continuing to bring you the best and uncompromised talk radio available on the net today. And remember, folks, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down in life. It only matters how many times you get up. I'm John Matthews, signing off until next time, right here on the Conservative Syndicate. God bless you, and may God continue to bless America.